Imagine an empire so feared that its very name sent shivers down the spines of kings and commoners alike. An empire whose military might was matched only by its reputation for absolute brutality. This was Assyria, the superpower that terrified the ancient world. For nearly 1,000 years, from the dusty plains of northern Mesopotamia, the Assyrians built an empire that stretched from modern-day Iran to Egypt, leaving a legacy written in blood and stone. But were they simply monsters, or was there more to their story? Let's uncover the truth behind the brutal empire that once ruled the world. The story of Assyria begins around 2500 BC, with a city named Ashur, nestled on the banks of the Tigris River. For centuries, they were a minor player, often overshadowed by powerful neighbors like the Babylonians and the Hittites. But something changed around the 14th century BC. The Assyrians began to innovate, particularly in warfare. They were among the first to master ironworking on a massive scale, trading their brittle bronze weapons for stronger, sharper iron swords and spearheads. This gave them a deadly advantage on the battlefield. Their military wasn't just about better weapons. It was a revolution in organization. The Assyrian army was a permanent, professional force, a well-oiled machine of conquest. It was divided into specialized units: swift, chariot-riding archers who acted as ancient tanks, disciplined infantry, armed with long spears and large shields, and skilled engineers who could build ramps and siege towers to overcome any defense. They were masters of siege warfare. No city wall was safe. They would dig tunnels to undermine foundations, use massive battering rams to smash gates, and rain a relentless storm of arrows upon the defenders. For any city that dared to resist, the message was clear: surrender or face annihilation. And this is where Assyria's fearsome reputation was truly forged. Their conquests were not just about acquiring territory, they were about psychological warfare. Assyrian kings didn't hide their cruelty, they advertised it. Royal inscriptions and palace reliefs, which we can still see today, boast of their brutal deeds in graphic detail. They depict captured enemies being flayed alive, impaled on stakes outside their city walls, and blinded or having their tongues torn out. These weren't just threats, they were promises carved in stone for all to see. Take, for example, the reign of Ashurnasirpal II in the 9th century BC. He famously inscribed on a monument, "I built a pillar over against his city gate, and I flayed all the chief men who had revolted, and I covered the pillar with their skins, ... Many captives from among them I burned with fire, and many I took as living captives. From some I cut off their noses, their ears, and their fingers. Of many I put out the eyes." This was propaganda of the highest order, designed to terrify potential enemies into submission before the first spear was even thrown. The goal was to make resistance seem so horrifyingly futile that cities would simply open their gates and accept Assyrian rule without a fight. And it worked. The Assyrians employed a policy of mass deportation. When they conquered a region, they would uproot entire population stems of thousands of people, land forcibly march them to other parts of the empire. This broke local loyalties, prevented organized rebellions, and provided a massive labor force for the empire's grand building projects. It was a cruel but effective tool of control. The famous lost 10 tribes of Israel were victims of this very policy, deported by King Sargon II after the fall of the Kingdom of Israel in 722 BC, but to label the Assyrians as nothing more than brutal warriors would be to ignore half their story. Behind the iron fist was a surprisingly sophisticated civilization. The Assyrians were brilliant administrators. To govern their vast empire, they developed a complex bureaucracy, an efficient network of roads, and a postal system that used relays of mounted messengers, much like the later Pony Express. This allowed the king in his capital to send and receive messages from the farthest corners of his realm with astonishing speed. Their cities were marvels of engineering and art. Capitals like Nimrod, Dur-Sharakin, and the legendary Nineveh were immense metropolises, protected by massive walls and adorned with magnificent palaces. The gates were guarded by colossal stone statues, known as llama-winged bulls, with human heads, believed to ward off evil. Inside, the palace walls were lined with the very reliefs that depicted their military victories. A constant reminder of the king's power. Perhaps Assyria's greatest and most lasting contribution was the library of Ashurbanipal, discovered in the ruins of Nineveh. Ashurbanipal was a paradox. A ruthless warrior king who was also a passionate scholar and collector. He sent scribes all over Mesopotamia to gather and copy every piece of written knowledge they could find, from religious rituals and medical texts, to astronomical observations and epic poems. His library contained over 30,000 cuneiform tablets, including our most complete version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known works of literature. Without Ashurbanipal's obsession with preservation, a vast amount of ancient Mesopotamian culture and knowledge would have been lost to history forever. So, the Assyrians were a complex people, terrifying conquerors and brutal propagandists and patrons of art and science. They built their empire on fear, but they also laid the administrative and cultural groundwork for the great empires that would follow, like the Persians and the Romans. But empires built on such foundations rarely last forever. The constant warfare and the immense resources needed to suppress rebellions took their toll. The sheer brutality of their rule ensured they had no friends, only resentful subjects waiting for a moment of weakness. That moment came in the late 7th century BC. A coalition of their long-suffering enemies, led by the Babylonians from the south and the Medes from the east, rose up in a massive rebellion. This time, the Assyrian war machine faltered. After decades of fighting on multiple fronts, it was stretched too thin. In 612 BC, the unthinkable happened. The great city of Nineveh, the heart of the Assyrian Empire, was besieged, captured, and utterly destroyed. The allies showed the Assyrians the same mercy the Assyrians had shown others. None. The city was looted, burned to the ground, and so completely devastated that its location was lost for over 2,000 years. The fall was so swift and so total that within a generation, the once mighty Assyrian Empire had vanished from the stage of history, becoming little more than a terrifying legend. The story of Assyria is a stark reminder that power built solely on terror is brittle. While their military and administrative innovations shaped the course of history, their legacy is forever stained by the cruelty they used to achieve it. They terrified the ancient world, but in the end, the hatred they sowed became the seeds of their own destruction. They were a brilliant, innovative, and terrifyingly brutal empire, a testament to the heights of human achievement and the depths of human cruelty. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the brutal heart of Assyria interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the empires of the past. Let us know in the comments which ancient civilization you'd like to see us cover next. Until next time.